Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Native Echo Podcast, where we make English simple and enjoyable. I am Harper, and today it is just me. No Julian, just you and me. A quiet moment, and something I have been thinking about for a while now. So grab your coffee or your tea or whatever you have next to you right now, and let us talk about something that most people find really, really hard: admitting that you were wrong. Yes, that is what we are doing today. And I promise, by the end of this episode, you will not only have some useful English for these moments, but you might also feel a little lighter about the whole thing. Because honestly, admitting mistakes is one of the most human things we can do. And somehow, we still find a way to make it complicated. Let me start with a story. And yes, it is embarrassing, but that is kind of the point. A few months ago, I was at work. We were planning something as a team, and I was very confident about one particular idea. Very confident. The kind of confident where you talk over people a little bit, where you say things like, "Trust me, I have done this before." And I did say that more than once. And then the result came, and my idea did not work. Not even a little bit. It was actually pretty bad. And there I was, sitting in that meeting room, looking at the outcome, and everyone was looking at me. Not in a mean way, just, you know, the way people look when they are waiting to see what you were going to do next. And I felt something that I think a lot of you have felt before: that tight feeling in your chest, that little voice in your head saying, maybe I can blame something else. Maybe I can redirect the conversation. Maybe no one noticed how sure I was before. But of course they noticed. And more importantly, I noticed. So I took a breath and I said something I did not want to say. I said, okay, that did not work. And that was my call. I should have listened more before I pushed for that direction. I am sorry. And you know what happened? Nothing dramatic. No one laughed. No one said I told you so. The meeting moved forward. We found a better solution together. And afterwards, one of my colleagues came up to me and said, "I really respect that you just said that directly." That one sentence stayed with me for a long time. Because here is the thing: we grow up thinking that admitting a mistake makes us look weak. Like if you say, "I was wrong," you are handing someone a weapon to use against you. And so we learn to avoid it. We learn to soften it. We learn to say things like, "Well, the situation was complicated." Or, "I think we all contributed to this." Or my personal favorite, "Mistakes were made." Mistakes were made. Not "I made a mistake." Just, you know, mistakes. Floating around in the air, nobody attached to them. Nothing to do with me specifically. That phrase is actually very famous in English. Politicians use it a lot. It is a way of acknowledging that something went wrong without actually taking personal responsibility. And it is interesting, right? Because it shows how much effort people put into not saying the simple thing. The simple thing being, "I was wrong. I am sorry. I will do better." 3 sentences. Very small. Very powerful. Very difficult for a lot of people, including me on many days. So let us talk about why it is so hard. Because I do not think it is just about pride, even though pride is definitely part of it. I think it goes a little deeper than that. One reason is what I would call the story we tell about ourselves. We all have an image of who we are. And for most people, that image includes being reasonable, being competent, being a good person. And when we make a mistake, especially a visible one, it feels like that image is cracking. Like someone is going to see the real version and decide that version is not good enough. So the mistake itself is not just a mistake. It becomes evidence. Evidence that you are not as smart as you thought, not as reliable, not as good. And the mind does not want to accept that evidence. So it fights it. It makes excuses. It finds other explanations. It shifts focus. This is actually something that psychologists talk about quite a lot. It is called protecting your self image, and it is incredibly common, not just in difficult people or people with ego problems, in everyone, including the people you admire, including the people who seem very confident and put together. Another reason is fear of what comes next. If I admit I was wrong, will they stop trusting me? Will they bring it up again later? Will this follow me around? And sometimes those fears are not entirely imaginary. Some environments, some relationships, some workplaces do not actually handle admissions of fault very well. Some people do use it against you. But here is what I have noticed. The places and people where admitting a mistake feels genuinely dangerous are usually not the healthiest environments to be in anyway. And in most everyday situations, the fear is much bigger than the actual risk. Think about the last time someone admitted a mistake to you. Maybe a friend who said, "I should not have said that. I am sorry." Or a colleague who said, "I got that wrong. Let me fix it." How did you react? I am guessing you did not think less of them. If anything, you probably thought more of them, because honesty in those moments is rare enough that it actually stands out. We are much more forgiving of other people's mistakes than we think they will be of ours. That gap between how harshly we judge ourselves and how gently we judge others is where a lot of unnecessary suffering lives. Okay, so we have talked about why it is hard. Now let us talk about what actually getting it right looks like. Because there is a difference between admitting a mistake well and admitting it badly. And yes, there is a wrong way to do it. Several, actually. The first wrong way is the non apology. This is when you say something that sounds like an apology, but is not really one. "I am sorry you fight that way. I am sorry if anyone was upset. I apologize to anyone who may have been offended." Notice what all of those have in common. The person is not saying they did anything wrong. They are just saying they are sorry about someone else's reaction. It is quite different, and most people can sense it. It often makes things worse rather than better. The second wrong way is the but apology. This is when you say, "I was wrong," but then immediately explain why it was not really your fault. "I should not have raised my voice, but I was very stressed. I am sorry I forgot, but it was a really busy week." The word but does something interesting. It kind of cancels what came before it. The person hearing it focuses on everything after the but, and what they hear is, "I am only apologizing to make this moment end." The third wrong way is the over apology. And this one surprises people because it sounds like you are being very sorry. So, how can that be wrong? But I am talking about the kind of apology that becomes more about the person apologizing than about the person they are apologizing to. It goes on and on. "I am so terrible. I cannot believe I did that. I'm the worst. I feel awful. Please forgive me." And now the other person is in a position where they have to comfort you. They have to say, "No, no, it is okay." And the focus has shifted completely away from the harm or the mistake and onto managing your feelings. That is not really an apology. That is a performance. So, what does a good admission of a mistake actually sound like? It is specific, not just, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I canceled at the last minute without giving you enough notice." Specificity shows that you actually understand what happened. It is not vague. It is not general. It takes clear ownership. "I did this." Not we, not the situation, not circumstances. "I made that decision. I said that thing. I forgot." It acknowledges the impact. "I know that put you in a difficult position. I know that was not fair to you. I understand that must have been frustrating." You are showing that you thought about how it landed for the other person, not just how it looked for you. And then, if possible, there is something forward looking. What are you going to do differently? Not a promise that covers everything forever, because those are hard to keep, but something concrete. "In the future, I will check with you first. I will set a reminder. I will ask before I assume." Something that shows this was not just words. And then, and this is important, you stop. You let it land. You do not immediately pivot to something else. You do not fill the silence with more talking. You give the other person space to receive what you said. Now, let me say something that might be a little uncomfortable. Sometimes admitting a mistake is not just about the other person. Sometimes you need to admit something to yourself. And that can actually be harder because you cannot soften it the same way. You cannot read the other person's face and adjust. You are sitting with yourself, and you have to be honest about the gap between who you thought you were in that moment and what you actually did. I have a habit I am still working on, and that is replaying things. I will do or say something that I later feel was not quite right, and my brain wants to go back and rewrite it. It wants to find a way to explain it so that past me was actually reasonable. And sometimes that exercise is healthy because we do sometimes misjudge ourselves harshly, but sometimes it is just avoidance. Sometimes the honest thing to do is to sit with, I handled that poorly, and just let that be true for a moment, not as punishment, just as information, because that information is actually very useful. When you let yourself see what you did clearly without immediately defending it, you learn something. You learn about what triggers you, what you tend to avoid, where your blind spots are. And that learning is what actually changes behavior over time. The people I know who are genuinely good at owning their mistakes are not people who beat themselves up endlessly. They are people who can look at something honestly, say, yes, that was me, sit with it briefly, and then move forward with the lesson. There is a kind of quiet strength in that. It does not look dramatic, but it is very real. There is also something worth saying about context, because admitting mistakes does not mean you should accept blame for things that are not your fault. That is a different situation entirely. Some people, especially people who grew up in environments where they were blamed a lot, develop a tendency to over-accept fault, to say, I am sorry, reflexively, even when they did not do anything wrong. And that is worth noticing too. A genuine admission of a mistake comes from a real recognition that something was your responsibility, not from pressure, not from the desire to end conflict at any cost, not from a habit of self-blame. If you find yourself apologizing constantly without being sure what you are even apologizing for, that is worth paying attention to. Okay, I want to end with something that has stayed with me since I read it, and I'm going to paraphrase because it really hit me when I first came across it. The idea was roughly this: making a mistake does not make you a failure. Refusing to see it clearly might. Because the mistake itself is finished, it already happened. The only thing you control now is what you do with it. And that includes whether you let it teach you something, whether you repair what needs repairing, and whether you are able to look at yourself honestly enough to actually change. That is not a small thing. That is, in a lot of ways, the whole project of becoming a better person. And doing it in a second language, the way many of you are doing right now, listening to this, trying to find the right words for something already hard to say in your first language, that takes real courage. So if you are working on this, in English or in any language, just know that the fact that you are thinking about it at all already puts you ahead of a lot of people who never do. Now, before I go, I want to leave you with a few phrases that are genuinely useful for these moments in English. Real, natural things people say when they are owning a mistake. I got that wrong. Simple, direct, no drama. I should have handled that differently. This one acknowledges the action without spiraling. That was my fault. Very clear, very clean. I did not think that through properly. Good for moments where the intention was okay, but the execution was not. I was not being fair to you. This one goes a little deeper and works well in personal relationships. I realize now that I was wrong about that. Slightly more formal, good for professional settings. And sometimes, just, I am sorry. Without anything else. Without explanation, just sincere and simple. You do not always need a big speech. Sometimes the most powerful thing is the smallest thing, said clearly and meant honestly. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode made you think about something, I would genuinely love to hear it in the comments. Even just one line about a time you admitted a mistake, or found it hard to, or noticed someone else do it really well. Those small stories are worth sharing. If you are enjoying Native Echo Podcast, please subscribe and leave us a like. It really does help more people find us. And share this with someone who might need to hear it today. You probably know someone. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.